It's very good to be here, and I thank Doc for inviting me. It's very exciting. So I want to start by just going back to last night, and there was the very last thing that happened last night was that young guy got up and did his dance thing, which was good. But the thing that interested me most about what that young man did was what he said at the end, which was that he's been here for 2 years and it's already changed his life. And that is what interests me in education, and I'm picking up on some of the things that Eva, the Vice-Chancellor, said last night and what Petra said last night about why are we doing all of this? What is the point? And if we are trying to change the world or change lives, how do we go about doing that? So many months ago, I did write an abstract and it was all about relationships, and I've changed my so many times, but I thought I'd still have this here because it still remains, for me, a very core thing. But what I'm going to talk about is mostly this, is how do we generate, or how do we educate for the next generation of leaders? And I suppose I'm focusing on this because of exactly what that young guy said last night, and what many students over the years have said to me when they finish their degree and they say, you know, this has been a wonderful degree, I've changed, I'm going to go off and do whatever I do. And I'm thinking about this because I've been at the University of Auckland for 8 years and had a particular strategic plan and a particular vision, and it's now coming to a sort of a natural cyclic end where next year I'm going on research study leave, I'm taking a year off, and then I come back and it's another phase of strategic planning and another phase of what direction do I go in. So I have over the last few months been reflecting upon, so why is it that those students when they leave say, this has changed my life, or this has been the best thing I've ever done, etc. And I know that a lot of you have heard these sorts of things in your classes or in your degrees, etc. But it fascinates me because what we do doesn't fall from heaven. We actually make things happen. We actually construct experiences and curriculums and processes that cause change. And I'm very interested, and in regard to some of those organisations that I work with at the international level, they're very interested, particularly UNESCO, are very interested in what does dance do to change the world. And part of my job is to sit around that table and articulate what does dance do to change the world. And you'd better keep dance on the table. It's not just all about music or art or everything else, because dance very quickly, as you all know, disappears from the arguments quite quickly. So it's all about advocating for dance, and dance can change the world. But how do we do it? And how do we educate the next generation so they will do it and do it better than what I do or you do? So one of the things I say to my first year students on the very first day of their very first degree is that my job is to teach you so as you replace me. I want you to get me out of a job. And if you can feel confident to replace my job, then I feel happy that I've done what I wanted to do. And by and large, I feel very happy that I have a lot of people wanting my job at the end, which is a scary thing. But I just want to quickly talk about two particular stories in the last 2 weeks that I've had with a postgraduate student and an undergraduate student. The postgraduate student, her name is True, and True is doing a postgraduate diploma in creative and performing arts in dance. And we were doing her seminar, and she was doing her seminar on Deleuze and rhizomic theory and the implications for dance education, all of which is just by the by. She finished her talk, and then she was talking about her fear of teaching and how she had been teaching with a friend in another institution teaching choreography. And she said, everything I've done in this class, I take and I apply when I go and teach on the other days. And she talked about how she understood the point of what it is to teach. She understood how important this word was, but also how do you make that happen in a classroom, because she really was genuinely quite unconfident and fearful of the whole thing of teaching. But to my pleasure, she said this particular course, 12 weeks, 2 hours a week, has changed her, and she now actually feels very confident and loves teaching, which for me is music to my ears. Another conversation I had with Caitlin. Caitlin's just finished her 3 years undergraduate degree, a degree in dance studies, and she comes from a town, and I saw a job advertised in this town for a studio teacher, and I sent this ad on to her and said, Caitlin, you might be interested in doing this job. It's in your town, etc., etc. And I saw her on the very last day of semester, and I said, did you get the email? And she said, yes, but I'm not interested. And I said, oh, I thought that would be right up your alley. And he said, 3 years ago, I would have jumped at it. But because of this degree, I want to do something else. I want to do more than just that. I want to go beyond that. I want to see different horizons. And I'm not sure what that actually means for her, but the thing that I was thrilled about was that she had felt that she could do more, and she had potential that she didn't have or didn't think she had 3 years ago. And again, that is music to my ears, but it keeps coming down to this. So what happened? What did we actually do in the last 3 years that I can learn from, so as I can continue it or improve it or whatever? So, but before I do that, I remember, well, last night, I think it was Aoife. Aoife said, it's very important that we define our success and identify what our success is. So I want you very quickly to think or write down and jot down, when you're teaching, and I don't care who you're teaching, teach anyone, how do you know if you've done a good job? How do you know if you're successful? So can you quickly jot that down or think in your head an answer to that question? How do you know if you're successful when you're teaching something? So if you could just quickly turn to the person beside you and share what you just thought about, as briefly as it may be. And give them the context of where you may have been teaching or what was your situation. So one of the tricks of the trade, as you all know when you're teaching, is to try and get other people to do all the talking and all the work. So well done, everyone. We could go on and I could just walk out the door now and you could still be talking here and learning and figuring out answers to all of these questions all by yourself. And I will come back to this process, this trick, time and time again. Basically, provide a structure and walk out the door. The less teaching you do, the more learning happens, often in what I'm learning. And often I have found, and again I'll talk about this later on, that there are particular groups of people that my students can teach way better than I can, simply because of age and all sorts of other things. But I'll talk about that later on. I just added a bit onto this phrase. I'm genuinely interested in improving the planet kind of stuff. It's how does dance, and particular dance teachers, because I think dance teachers are the heart of the whole thing, help to improve our communities? And I suppose I'm thinking of think local, because that's where it's going to happen, but the aim is to have a better planet. So as a head of department, I suppose my job is to set up this thing, this degree, these structures, these ideas, so that it all may happen. So I'm going to talk about what I'm doing in the University of Auckland in New Zealand, but to help me do this, I'm going to use a a model or a diagram that I developed out of my PhD. And my PhD was about understanding primary school teachers' meanings of dance in their classroom. So put aside the curriculums, put aside everything, just walking into your classroom and saying, what is dance for you? And hours and hours and hours of conversation and what that might be. And I purposefully selected these 9 primary school teachers. I didn't want them all to be gung-ho advocates for dance. I wanted people who hated it. I wanted people who were good at it. I wanted people who didn't care. I wanted principals, etc. So there was a particular group. So anyway, after all the study and after drawing all these diagrams, a key thing was a whole set of relationships. Coming back to that key word. So I'm going to draw this. I just love whiteboards. I'm going to draw basically the end of my PhD. And it starts with a teacher, learner, dance, and curriculum. And the most important thing were these arrows. And these arrows, to a certain extent, are relationships. So this is the classroom, and I'm thinking the classroom's in a particular bubble, and there are all sorts of things coming in at the classroom all the time. So those sorts of things coming in, like money, classroom next door, parents, religion, culture, etc., etc., etc. There are 1,001 things coming into the classroom. All of you have been in a classroom. You know what it's like. The joy of locking the door and saying, get out, stay out. Or inviting people in and having that discussion. I have put the teacher in the middle. And this was, again, this is out of my PhD. I mean, I believe this, but this is where the teachers started to put themselves, once they started talking and reflecting on what they do and what they wanted to know. The number one, well, as we talked, the teachers became, or felt more and more, how do you say, liberated or more confident or more willing to give things a go or more understanding of where they've come from and where they're going to. But at the beginning of these conversations with my persons in my PhDs, they felt extraordinarily pressured by the curriculum, by the students, and by dance. And they actually felt, to quote one teacher, I feel extraordinarily bullied by dance. And I said, what do you mean? Well, I'm supposed to be blonde, I'm supposed to be skinny, I'm supposed to be a woman, I'm supposed to be all these things, I'm supposed to be good at it, I'm supposed to be technical, all etc., etc., etc. Another person reflected, well, the curriculum, and I said, well, where is the curriculum? It's, well, it's that orange book on the bookshelf. And I said, do you use it? And he said, no. Does it concern you? He says, well, it should concern me, but I don't use it, etc., etc. The thing that they loved the most were obviously the kids, the learners, but surprisingly, they never used the children as the main resource or the main partner in teaching dance. They always felt that they had to know everything and that they were going to teach the kids dance. And I said, but what if all the kids knew lots of stuff? I mean, all the kids are going to know a lot more kapa haka or Pacific Island dance or hip-hop than you're ever going to know. And I said, yes. So how do you use that as your resource? So we worked on this relationship. What does this mean? And this, and this. And how does curriculum and dance, etc. And I won't go into it, well, I actually will in my next little stage. But anyway, the point is that I found this model, or this diagram, very helpful when I was thinking of this talk and how I started to break down and critically reflect on what I've been doing in setting up our dance degrees. So, but before, do I want to go there? Yes, I will. So I did this degree at the University of Otago, which is in the south of New Zealand. It's another lovely university. When I was there, I was the main lecturer in dance, and I suppose the thing I learnt there was how to argue for dance within a university. It was my first university appointment. That was 15 years ago when I started there. And I went about designing curriculums and growing our little program and making it something substantial. The thing that I learnt there the most, however, was how to argue for and defend dance within a tertiary situation, how to advocate for it, so as people who were very doubtful of the role of dance in university actually got it. Because it's very important that we have to make these arguments that make sense to other people. So when I moved to the University of Auckland in 2005, I was asked to go to that university, and they had a dance degree at that university, but it had just been reviewed in 2004 and was found to be quite broken, and they basically wanted someone to come and fix it and to make it whatever. The university had a choice to either can it altogether or to invest in it heavily. Those were the outcomes of the review. To my huge surprise, the university decided to invest in it heavily, and that's what they did. So in 2005, there was a staff member of one, which was me, and there were 10 very angry undergraduate students, and one quite broken curriculum, and a nice dance studio. In 2012, we have 80 full-time undergraduates, 25 full-time postgraduates, 4 postgraduate degrees, 8.5 staff members, a dean and vice-chancellor who love dance and will happily do anything for dance, a new studio happening, so that's 4 studios, but the most important thing was students who leave the degree and get jobs. About 70% of the students get dance-related jobs very, very quickly, which to my delight and surprise is unusual, I think. In New Zealand, dance is in the school curriculum. Dance is something you can do in primary school. Dance is a subject at high school. Dance is a university entrance subject. And there is a thing called dance scholarship, which is for advanced study in any subject area. So in essence, in New Zealand, you can study dance from the age of 5 to the end of your PhD as a complete raft of study, and it's seen as a comparable subject to any other subject in the curriculum. To make that argument, however, you have to use quite a lot of language and skills and structures to get there. So understanding what teachers actually think and do is important in helping administrators to provide the money, to provide the system, to provide the support. So getting back to this model, there are 3 key things which I think were important when the teachers realised, when they started reflecting. They became much more comfortable in being a teacher and a dance educator when they reflected on their own history and their own belief systems. I mean belief system as in, how do I like to teach? Do I like to stand out the front? Do I like to have everyone in a circle? Blah, blah, blah. But also to think about their histories of everyone has danced. And when all these teachers say, oh no, I've never danced. No, hate it, I never dance. And says, well, do you go to disco? And says, no. Did you go to your sister's wedding and you did a dance? Well, I did a little shuffle. So have you ever closed your bedroom door and just put the music on really loud and gone for it? And they say, oh yes, I've done that, etc. Have you ever done a folk dance? Have you ever done a sasa? Have you ever, have you ever, have you ever? And once they started thinking about all those have I evers, they said, oh yes, I actually have done some dance. And so good, that's your number 1 resource, is that you have done it. The next thing they learnt is that to get confident in doing more, the most important thing was doing more. Not reading it, not looking at a curriculum, but actually dancing and most importantly, actually trying to teach dance. So one of the important things in a lot of the literature is to improve dance education is actually to practice it teaching dance. And it's an important distinction from doing just dance. The other thing that was important for them to do was to not get bamboozled by theories or ideas, but just come back to the practice and come back to ethics and come back to their morals. And I say ethics and morals because it's astoundingly important how those words get in the way of what they think is right, what they think is good education. And when primary school teachers and secondary school teachers are increasingly accountable to parents, they have to be able to articulate, this is a good thing to do. This is good education. So what does that mean from a teacher's point of view and a parent's point of view? So, back to the model and back to the degree structures. So I really am interested in how have I and my staff created a series of degrees that have helped people change and feel empowered to go out there and do their thing, whatever that is. So it's important for me to try and unpack this. But whilst I rub the board out, I want you to turn to your pen and paper again, and I want you to write down the answer to this question. So think of if you've ever been given the opportunity to make something new or to change something. And I want to know, where did you start? So if you've ever had a chance to build a new something, make a new cake, create a new car, whatever, teach a new lesson, just something, you just made a new something. I want to know, how did you start in thinking, oh, I'm going to just ponder. If you've never, ever started anything new, then you'll learn from someone sitting beside you in a minute. So just quietly think about that whilst I rub the board. So the next little activity I want you to do is very quickly draw a picture of yourself teaching dance. A picture, stick picture, any kind of picture. If you're a wonderful drawer, then go for it. If you're just and it can be as abstract or as perfect as you want. I just want you to draw a picture of yourself teaching dance. Again, it could be any person, anywhere. But try and draw a picture of yourself teaching dance. So, on the very first day of your very first undergraduate degree in your very first university and the very first hour, my students do dance education. It's my belief that it's the absolute most important thing is to how to teach. That's just where I'm coming from. But there you are, you're 18 years old and you really don't care about theory, you really don't care about any of that kind of stuff. You just want to get up and dance, baby. So, how do you suck all these young kids into thinking about philosophy and who they are and what they want to achieve? Draw a picture, make a dance, it's a very good thing. So I get them to draw pictures of themselves teaching dance. And just like you've all had a huge variety of things, some kids have squiggles, some kids have got neat, tidy rows, some kids have got a very tall person out the front and very small people down the back, some people have got lovely circles, etc., etc. There's a huge number of pictures. I would then ask, and I might ask you to do this later on, depending if I run out of time, make a statue of how you would teach dance. Show me what that looks like. And then show me the power relation. Show you get to actually physically, tactilely get up and do these sorts of things to represent what it is they're trying to do. Then I say, so what do you think your philosophy or your belief is? If you're in a circle, what do you think that means? And then after 5 hours of silence, I then said, so do you think it means you're all equal, or you've all got inclusive and all the key words about democracy, etc., and you build it up and build it up. But I don't start by saying, okay, what are your philosophies and beliefs, and let's get into the literature right now, because it's not going to sink in and it means nothing to an 18-year-old boy or girl. But anyway, to go back to the first question, where do you begin if you're going to create something new? I was given the chance to create a whole new department and create new degrees and create whatever I want. I had a marvellous dean who said, just go and do it, Ralph. And so I did. So I sat in a cafe in Montreal, of all places, and I pondered, where do I start? And I stared and I stared and I stared and drank a lot of coffee, and by the end of the day... and I kept drawing things, and then I stopped and I looked at the paper and I said, I kept drawing circles. And that was the key thing for me. I was interested in this thing of community, in this thing of inclusion, this includes participation, etc. Dialogue. So when I then, in my own world, think, what does that mean in terms of philosophy and beliefs, is I'm a constructivist. That means I'm interested in dialogue. I'm interested in interaction. I have a genuine concern in a degree of democracy in the classroom, but I do not, for any moment, think that the teacher is at the same level, because the teacher is the leader of the classroom. Take the teacher out, and often you have chaos, or you just have a rabble, or things go along if you've set it up well. But teachers are important. So within a constructivist philosophy, the teacher is still leading, and there are still followers, and that leading-following relationship changes. So I'm also very interested in leadership theory, increasingly interested in leadership theory, because the thing that I'm finding in leadership theory is just basically be honest. There is the leader, and if there's a leader, there's a follower. And if you're a good leader, you'll swap places with the followers. And if you're a really good leader, you'll admit that you haven't done a very good job. So there's constant, this idea of leadership is interesting. But there also the thing is that a leader is someone who initiates an activity or initiates an idea and then allows for the mistakes to happen and then works on those mistakes so there are less mistakes. But nonetheless, the creative act of the leader and the teacher is to initiate something, whatever. But it's a really important point that I think I'm coming out here. But anyway, I decided in the whole thing, I had to understand who I was, where I was coming from. I'm a constructivist. I'm interested in dialogue. I'm interested in this inclusion, participation, that there are many ways of knowing. A lot of the things that Ava was talking about yesterday in sort of the postmodern turn, there's no one way, there's no one truth, I don't like the banking stuff, etc., etc. So all of that stuff comes into it there. The other thing that I'm very interested in is sociology of community. And I'm interested in the sociology of community because I'm wanting to make the classroom a community. And how do you make a classroom feel like a community? It's how do you create that vibe? You know when it works, you know when it's happening, but how do you step in and make it happen? So for me, I'm very interested in two words in that sociology of community. One is significance, that every person feels significant, that they can contribute something. Anything but something. So every person wants to turn up because they feel that they could contribute something. The next word is solidarity, that as a group we feel togetherness. We feel a certain we-ness. We did this. We went there. It's really good for having all the second years going, we did a good job. And so, yes, you did, etc. So that we feeling is important. So significance and solidarity are important. The other thing in Sociology of Community, and I've been reading town planning ideas, because in my faculty there's town planners, so I talk to the town planners, and how do you make community? As in structurally plan a community. And one of the things I'm interested in is the notion of creating civic spaces. One of the things I love about coming to Europe are the civic spaces, the squares, the gardens, etc., where you go in and you sit or stare or whatever you do. Instead of having highways of education, you have civic squares. We tend to have these curriculums that say you've got to get from A to Z as fast as you can and make no mistakes along the way. And curriculums are sort of these motorways. But where are the civic spaces along the way where you can just stop and mess around and sort of look at someone in the eye and have these moments of true understanding? So I'm very interested in this notion of community and civic spaces, and I want a classroom to be a civic space where kids can come in and look at each other in the eye, and the teacher can look at someone in the eye and sort of understand what they're learning, what they're not doing. So when I sat down, I'm going to make a new degree, I said, what drives me? Because I have to explain all of this to my dean, I have to explain it to the vice-chancellor, and they have to understand it, and they have to believe in what I'm going to do. So this was important. And when I talk to a teacher in their classroom and they're going to do something at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so what's motivated, what drives you, who are you in this session, who do you want to be, what are your ideas about self? And once teachers again reflect on who they are just as people, then they start to understand how they can approach teaching of something that most people are quite fearful of. The bulk of all those primary school teachers, secondary school teachers, are quite scared of teaching dance. So it's very interesting how you can sort of turn that around. But anyway, I'm back to designing a degree. So there I am, sitting, okay, that's me. And then I thought, okay, so this is going to be very messy, excuse me. I had to figure out, well, what's my product? What am I going to advertise? And so I said, what's my curriculum? What are all the degrees I'm going to have? I want to have a Bachelor of Dance Studies. I want to have a PhD. I want to have a Master's. How do I structure those things? So all of this between me and curriculum. So how did I go about creating a product? How did I create pathways that link to things? How did I make sure that this was rigorous and true to this, relevant to them, consequent to teachers? So I'm constantly going around all of these different maps. It's like a map. This one here, me and dance. I came to dance very late. I did my first dance lesson when I was 26 years old. I wasn't particularly interested in dance as a kid. I was into running very fast and jumping very high. And I did that very well. And then I did a ballet class and I think, oh goodness, how unusual. But it intrigued me and it set me on a new road. So when I think of dance and when I'm going to advocate dance, I have to be true to myself, and I have to allow, if I'm honest, then the kids will be honest. And I want them to be honest. And in New Zealand, there are some beautiful dancers. But these young girls are big women from the Pacific Islands, and they dance immaculately beautifully. And they've never done ballet. And they're not going to roll on the floor. So who am I to say, this is what you have to do? It's totally irrelevant in their life. They're not going there, so why have a degree based upon this whole thing? So that's who is the learner, who am I appealing to? So it's very important. But I also know that there are a group of girls who are very into ballet and jazz and everything else. How do I appeal to them? How do I meet all of these different needs in a degree? So again, you have to have a structure that provides choice, provides pathways, etc. But the most important thing is to actually look at who is out there, who is interested. And then what is their relationship to dance? I know that they all want to do hip hop, and that's about it. That's 3 years of hip hop would be great. And they come with quite blinkered, this is dance, this is dance, this is dance. And then after 3 years, my point is to take that off and look wider. So how do I get them to do this? When they turn up for an audition, well, that was another choice. Do I audition people to get into this degree? And I thought, well, what's the point? I'm not going to look at how high they kick their leg. I'm going to look at their eyes. And I don't know how they're going to audition their eyes, but I liked the whole breathing through the eyes trick. So I had to make those decisions of, auditions, what does that mean? Because again, this relationship was really important. The other thing was all of the kids wanted to be dancers. I said, well, have you ever thought of being a choreographer? Oh, I just do that. But you could make a job out of it. Oh, they didn't know. Have you ever thought of being a teacher? Teacher at primary school, teacher in a hospital, teacher in old people's homes, teachers. So, never thought of that. But they all want to dance. So this relationship to dance is just doing the stuff, learning more steps. And she says, well, learning more steps is not going to pay the bills. You're actually going to have to do more than learn steps. It's a lovely thing to do, and we're going to do lots of it. But I have to give you a degree in education that's going to take you beyond just steps. So convincing them that this is going to change. And the other thing of the social cultural context of the students, if they're Maori, then there's a huge set of values and systems in place that shape how they want to dance. And it's extraordinarily rich and very valuable. How do you deal with traditional dance and the contemporizing of those traditional dances? And what's the arguments? And so what happens when you, as in me, the teacher, or whatever, go and teach Pacifica Sasa, and I play with it. I do all these non-traditional things. And half of the kids love it, and the other half they say, that's not true dance, that's wrong. That's not how I've done it in my home. And I said, well, let's talk about that. When is a dance a dance? When is a traditional dance ever tradition, etc.? And we talk about these anthropological and cultural ideas for a long time. But that all opens up ideas and thinking. And the kids start to go home and ask their parents and their grandparents and their aunties and uncles about what they do. And then they start to be interested in history. And then they start to do all these things. And they also learn about who Trisha Brown is, which is a thrill. But the important thing is it's providing a structure and spaces for them to have these discussions. But the discussions do not begin from the book, they begin from real life. They begin from their family, they begin from where they start and where they want to go to. And so it keeps going around and round and round, and it's understanding all the pragmatics, all the obvious questions. What's relevant to children? How am I going to get ownership? How am I going to do assessment? How am I going to have workloads? How am I going to use the timetable? If I go through, I can put all of these things in different relationships in this model. So when I sit down and I think of a 6-year plan, I was thinking of all of this kind of stuff and how to make it work for me. And the trickiest is how to make it work for other staff members and how to find staff or employ staff or educate staff who are interested in that particular approach or who are capable of seeing things. But again, the thing that I don't want to have is a whole staff of Ralphs or a whole staff of Petras, or I want to have diverse teachers doing diverse things in diverse ways. But there are ground rules. Do your thing. But this is the most important thing. You have to respect the learner, the person. Every person who comes into that dance room has something. And it's going to be very different to the other person and very different to you, the teacher. So how are you, in a teaching learning language, going to recognise that they're bringing something in, value it, and use it in your modern choreography or whatever? So how do you value individuals? How do you take them somewhere else? The other thing that I insist on the teachers is I want my teachers to be able to teach children, students who are very good at something, and in the same room have people who have never done it before. And you all know what kind of hell that is to teach in many instances, but it's very doable. And I want the students to see how it can happen by mentoring or watching the teacher, but I also want the students to very clearly see they only know something of dance, they don't know it all. And that this person is a very good hip-hop dancer, this person is a very good Samoan dancer, this person is very good at Tongan dance, this person is very good at jazz dance. And it's all good stuff. There's no hierarchy, it's just So that's, again, coming back to here, coming back to where I'm going, coming what the students are going to do. But anyway, to come down to the last bit. There is one paper that I teach that I've designed, and it's called Dance 231 Community Dance. And I'm going to talk to this paper in particular because for me it illustrates a lot of the nitty-gritty little things that we do to help do all this stuff. So, what we do, this dance is community dance, and the emphasis is on the people who are dancing rather than the dance. So it's going into different contexts and teaching different people different ways. It's 4 experiential field trips. We go into a high school and we teach kids with special needs. We go into a hospital and we teach kids in the psych unit. We go into a retirement village and we teach elderly. And we go on a dance camp to the far north of New Zealand and we dance on the beach and in the forests. And in all of these different experiences, I give the students a lot of times to be leaders, a lot of times to be followers, a lot of times to make mistakes, a lot of times to think about how is this relevant to them in their world. So it thrills me that when we're dancing in the forest in the north of New Zealand and this young Samoan woman turns to me and says, "This is it. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to return to Samoa and I'm going to make a dance company and I'm going to protest about logging in Samoa." She didn't do it, but the fact that she had the thought is what intrigues me. Instead, she set up her own dance company in Auckland, Pacific Island Dance for women, and she has her own company and does her thing full time and employs other students who are doing all that stuff. And yes, they do political activist kind of things. But anyway, that's just an example of the whole thing. But the thing that makes it important is that it's real. Again, the whole experiential, it's real life. So when they go into schools, they go into hospitals, there's no sort of, this is an academic or theoretical exercise. It's a practical, real thing, and you're going to have to survive it. And again, as I said before, I can't teach some people how to teach in various contexts. I just have to provide the space, and you're going to have to figure out the micro details by yourself, and you will make mistakes. And then we're going to come back next week and do it again. And then we're going to come back again and do it again. And I'll provide a different kind of safety net for you in each instance. So it's providing these little experiences, these little safety nets, so the students feel secure, and that's a very key word for me, secure to take risks, to secure to make mistakes, knowing that it's not the end of the world, knowing that it is a risk and a challenge, and that they can have another go. So I could go on more about Dance 231, but I won't.
In some questions?
Yes, I'm just going to read 5 more words.
Yes.
No, no sentences, and then that's it. So in closing, for me, when I'm thinking about these big questions, I want to review what is the current situation. I want to know what's working and what's not working in a degree or in a structure. The second thing is to develop a vision, have an aim, go somewhere, either for the year, for 6 years, or in that lesson, have an aim, a vision, and then a plan that you can share with other people so as they can understand your vision. The third thing that is important for me is to provide those structures and then step back and allow the mistakes to happen. And then focus on mistakes and try it again. And aim to have less mistakes less often, but have the mistakes is an important thing. The bulk of the mistakes are all to do with the relationship between the teacher and the learner. That's where most problems occur, where they just don't see each other. But it's the most important relationship, and I think it's where we should start. And finally, and in response to Ava's question last night, can dance save the planet? And I think yes, as long as you remember that it's all about people.
Okay, we have a little time if there are some questions or if you want to say something. Yes, I hope this will work now.
Hi. Going back to the first part of the talk,
yep.
I'm very impressed with your ideas that the way to get, a lot of us work to get general education teachers to adopt dance or use dance in their classrooms. Mm-hmm. And the idea that the way to become more confident about teaching is to teach as opposed
yep.
to just experiencing it. We all do these workshops and everyone goes away excited, and then when they're in the context of teaching, mm-hmm. they don't.
Yeah.
A lot of my research is on this, and I found in my research that teachers actually think dance is very important. We don't have to convince them that it's important, but they tend to think it's important for other people to teach. And so I'm wondering, in the influencing people, the other thing I found in my research was that it didn't matter what background they had in dance, whether they had ever taken a dance class before. What mattered was whether they considered themselves a creative person, was the #1 predictor. And the reason people who did it said they did it was because they said the kids need it. They need to move. I understand, I'm not reaching them if I do not use movement. So I'm just wondering what you found in terms of the influence once they had thought through these things. Did they use dance more, or what can you suggest to us to help that move forward?
Thank you, and it's very true. I found that the teachers didn't think that they were creative in teaching dance. They thought they were creative in teaching English, maths, geography, social studies, and all the other things they know very little about, but suddenly it stopped when it came to creatively teaching dance. And when I pointed out to one teacher that, look, I know you hate it, I know you don't want to do it, but just pretend it's an English subject, you know, teach English, but just swap the word English for dance and use the same strategies. And that's exactly what she did, because she was terrified. And she had a really good time. And an hour later, the kids were still talking and chatting, and then the kids started dancing to each other in their own little groups. And the teacher was about to, and I said, just let it go, just do less. And she had a very good dance lesson by just doing, buzz circles, sitting around big pieces of paper and drawing circles. I mean, it was just something she does all the time. And she relaxed once she did that little thing and then started doing more dance. And then she's actually found that the kids knew a lot more about it than her. And she started getting the kids to do the teaching, and she just provided the structure and the discipline and the other things that she does. I mean, it's all really simple, but that's just what she did. And then she eventually opened up the curriculum and found some key strategies there and went on. And I visited, 3 months after, and she said, we've just choreographed thing, and we did it at a school assembly and all this stuff. And this was a woman who hated dance because she was teased by her sister because she was quite a big woman and she hated her body, and she just was never going to put it out in public and all those sorts of a lot of issues, complex. And so in talking to her about that and sort of many tears, etc., I said, well, let's just work through these things, etc. So she was very confident in doing it eventually when she realised that she did not have to be the performer or the star. She just had to do what she knew best. And she was creative eventually, yes. So I agree.
Is there any more questions?
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I don't have a question. I'm just thinking that if I heard you right, I'm very grateful that you didn't talk about dance as being good for something else. You talked about dance as being good for dance. And because very often when we talk about dance, especially in schools, I mean in, what do you call it, for kids, we talk about dance as good for something else. But maybe something else could be good for dancing. But you were actually not saying that, and I'm very happy for that, so thank you.
Some teachers may do that, and principals in schools will use those arguments, which is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But I very much, and a lot of teachers don't like the word dance, and so we'll do movement theatre, or we'll do movement games, or we'll do jumping up and down to music, or we'll do Zumba, or we'll do aerobics, or we'll do physical theatre. I mean, 1,001 words, but never dance. It's a nasty word. But if I just say, look, just do it, for heaven's sake, just say you're doing dance.
Yeah.
And don't defend it sometimes, just do it. And let the kids, let the sparkles in their eyes, let all of that desire to come to school the next day be the answer of why you did dance. In Australia, when I was writing curriculums, I used to talk to a lot of secondary school principals, and I said, why are you offering dance in your school? And so it's the one subject that the naughty boys will turn up for. And I said, so how does that work? And he said, well, they fail in English, in maths, etc., but they're astoundingly good at dancing and at making dance and moving, etc. And I put them in the same room with the very bright girls, because the people who do dance, in my experience, well, in Australia, has been the smart girls and the struggling boys. And the smart girls teach the struggling boys everything. I mean, everything. And the struggling boys also teach the smart girls quite a lot of things as well. So it's a wonderful thing. But the principals of the schools, from their sort of administrative point of view, use dance as a way just to get kids to turn up. And when I worked in Sydney in how would I describe the school? A severe behaviour problem school, where all children who had been expelled from 3 schools, so you had to be expelled from 3 different schools, like you had to be really seriously bad, you put them all in one school. I mean, it's so obvious, that's what you do. So anyway, I didn't volunteer. I said I want to teach in that school. Idiot that I was. But anyway, I needed money, so I went and taught in that school. And I had 10 11-year-old children And they're violent. They are extremely violent, and they have no interest in turning up to school. And after many, many, many months of lots of tricks of the trade, I used the arts, dance, drama, music, etc., to get them to stop hitting each other. In the main thing, just actually to stop being violent. And by the end of the year, they were happily sitting very close to each other, turning up to school, and having an extraordinarily good experience. But again, it was the arts, or dance in particular, that taught them how to tolerate, how to just be comfortable, and all sorts of things. So it's an amazing thing when you just let some things go and just provide a space and opportunity that it works. So it's good.
We could keep on, Rolf.
We could.
It's really nice to hear you, but we have to think of the next keynote. Yes. So I want to thank you a lot. And this is our headmaster. She's been doing research in art research, so you will give that to you and have it. And Eva, we were so carried away yesterday. Eva and Katrina, you will of course also get one. I have it over there. Okay, thank you, Ralph.
Thank you.